Welcome. Hi. So, we.
Who
Hi.
up? Who up attacking their Titan?
Who up attacking the Titan at 3 a.m.? Okay, so this is actually a part two of an analysis series. We already did part one, where we talked about the first season, and it should be in the description, and there will be an end card on this video linking you to it. Now
It
we're
was
talking about
very epic.
season. Now we're talking about season two. So I guess, you know, we don't have to completely repeat everything we said in the first review, but after season one of Attack on Titan dropped, the show was kind of a hit, kind of a big deal.
It was a little popular, a little bit.
Yeah, just people wouldn't shut up about it. It was like a big part of our culture. It became like a big meme.
Yeah,
And everybody was
I mean,
chatting about it.
I mentioned it before, but I think Attack on Titan is like one of the animes that really popularized anime in the West. So
Yeah,
its
so
impact is there, at least for America. Definitely a cultural phenomenon. Sekiro fans, when I kill them, it's okay because Shadows died twice.
yeah, you're not funny.
Oh.
So, I mean, we did a pretty detailed podcast about season one of Attack on Titan, and my thoughts on it were much less charitable than yours. But the one thing that I was able to take away from season one is that it had potential. Like, it had something that I felt could have been interesting, and they certainly delivered in the later seasons. So,
Yeah,
for
that's
five
true.
years, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, really, it does really build upon itself, and I think you'd agree that each season is better than the last. Feels like it's
Yeah.
just
The funny thing is, like I said, back when it first came out, I wasn't a fan. I thought it was mid. I thought it was overrated. I thought it was boring. And then for 5 years, it was just pure radio silence. And I remember occasionally I'd be like, when is season two going to come out? I'm kind of curious. Because I still wanted to see one for some reason, even though I thought it was like mid as hell. Um, so for 5 years, there was nothing. And I remember like I actually was excited once they finally announced that there was going to be a season two because I didn't want to pick up the manga. I couldn't really read manga all that well at the time. Uh,
reading is
and then
strange.
2017 rolls around, and I'm a completely different person. And it gets a season two, and it's somehow that was when I first became a fan. Was around 2017, rather than 2013 when it first came out.
I apologize. I wasn't really familiar with your
That's pretty much
game.
that was pretty much my reaction. At the very least, season two felt like what season one was for everybody else. Season two
Yeah,
actually had more of that effect to me because it actually kind of reminds you that these titans are creepy, and it actually kind of reminds you that uh, this is a thriller and there's like actual like stakes. Season one didn't
yeah.
really feel like there was much of that.
We'll get to that, but I know exactly what you're saying. There's that little segment with like Reiner and Historia and Ymir that like really feels like survival horror more than it does like a shonen. And I thought that was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
because I felt like
I feel like
a lot of season one felt like shonen. Weirdly,
yeah.
what were you
I
gonna
was
say?
gonna say I feel like I have less to say about season two than I do for the other seasons, but that's only because I think I have less to criticize about it than I do season one. It's very solid, and it builds on the first season really well.
I mean, already from the bat, it does. It doesn't waste any time. It pretty much picks up. Like, it does do a little bit of a flashback, but it pretty much picks up like right where season one left off. Uh,
Yeah,
so
I think
with the
part of
first
it
episode,
also.
oh, go
I
ahead.
think part of it like happens kind of like at the same time as the end of season one, so it's a little bit odd chronologically, but I think I followed it.
Yeah, and like up until this point, I've always complained about their flashbacks and their previously on Attack on Titan, but like this is the one case where I'll give it to them for the simple fact that it did take like fucking years just to get another season, which never happened. And also that must have been disappointing at the time too. Like if you really were invested in season 1 and it was like amazing, and then you wait 5 years for a season 2 for what, like 12 episodes, like half the length of the first season. That can kind of put a bad taste in your mouth. Because at least like with Vinland Saga fans and Jujutsu Kaisen fans, season 2 is at least 24. So, like at least 20 plus episodes. So, I could see why some people would
like
find
4 years or less. Too.
Basically,
so.
At the time, the anime had kind of fallen off a little bit. Like people did not care. It got some attention because it was like, oh, it's finally here. But like a lot of the time, people were focusing on other shows coming out at the same time, other new up and coming anime. So there wasn't much traction for season 2 compared to season 1.
Yeah, I mean there always tends to be more interest in the premiere season than later, just because people have a bias towards novel and new. But yeah.
So how does this begin?
Yeah. So the beginning of this is like just after season 1, after we've just learned that there are titans in your walls.
They are living in your wall. Yeah, actually, you didn't learn that in season 1. You actually do learn that here. Like it starts here.
Just right at the beginning.
Yeah. So basically, after Annie crystallizes herself, they look up at the wall, and they see just a big-ass titan peeking his head through the wall. And this becomes kind of one of the most important details that feeds into probably the craziest thing in Season 4. But, yeah, the Titans are in the wall. The walls are made out of Titans, essentially.
That's a really interesting reveal to me. Like, I was like, that actually surprised me. Before I was kind of predicting some of the twists, like Eren being a Titan, because I kind of knew going in. But that surprised me, and what's more surprising is like it keeps building on itself with all of these reveals, and it all still makes sense, and it all like leads to something. Like the fact that they're Titans on the wall, there's a good reason, and there are some serious consequences later.
You gonna bless me? You gonna bless me?
I'm not gonna bless you. You.
Wow.
You a sinner.
Some friend.
Me.
Friend you are for that.
Maybe go to church, you pagan.
And that leads into the next plot point where Hanji and Levi and Eren and all of them basically try to find answers, because apparently the wall religion god guy, the priest of the church that got trampled over by Annie, knows about the Titans. He knows something that they don't.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that the walls are made out of Titans.
He knew that there were Titans in the walls, so he probably knows more, and so they're trying to get him to yap.
Yeah, and so that becomes. Well, hold on.
I was gonna say the other thing that's happening.
So that happens. That's like the focus of our main characters, like the Levi squad and all them, and then aside from that, we kind of go back in time a little bit to the rest of the crew, like Reiner and Sasha and all them, Connie, to focus on their little mission where they're being watched by guards and they don't have gear, and they're going on. These Titans come from somewhere, and so
they're inside Wall Rose, which is not where the Titans are supposed to be, but then Titans show up, and so their conclusion is that the wall has been broken again, but they don't know where the hole is.
Yeah, they get attacked. Like the first focus is they get attacked by Titans, and most of them make it out just fine. I mean, there's a bit of this like stressful part where Sasha's being literally chased by a big ass Titan while she's on a horse, and he's got hella cheeks, and he's just on all fours, just jumping around. So how she got out of that, I don't know. But we then focus on Zachary, the weird guy from season 1 who would like sniff people and then grin. We didn't know much about him. Or no, not Zachary. I don't remember his name.
Whoever he is, he was like the second strongest guy
I think
next
Zachary
to
was
Levi.
the degenerate. But either way, we won't talk about him until season 3. So, just this weird guy, and he is doing pretty well against the Titans. There's this big monkey Titan walking back and forth, and he's got a couple that are just standing there, just looking at him. And so he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna call my horse over here. As soon as I get on my horse, I can dip. I can just get out of here.
Get out.
Because they don't attack horses. But then the monkey Titan picks up the horse and throws it at him. And then squats down in front of him. And it turns out he can speak. And he has intelligence. And I remember when I first saw that, like, that was pretty much what it sold me, was like, okay, that's new. That's like something different that hasn't been done with these Titans. That's also freaky. Because it's like, oh, they can talk now. I mean, some of them are... There is, I will say... I think it was released before Season 2. There was an OVA where there's like a... It's a really creepy one where this woman, she's keeping a journal, and eventually she gets cornered by a Titan. And the Titan... She looks kind of similar to Ymir. His, like, goddess Ymir. So he, like, bows down to her and is, like, trying to hold back his urge to eat her, but then eventually just gives in and eats her. And so it shows that there's a little bit more to these Titans. They're not just like mindless animals. They seem to have some weird ritualistic behavior. But this is kind of the one that, like...
I start kind of intuiting like where the series is going. So okay, there are clearly other Titans that are like Eren, that are people and intelligent. It's such a fun. I gotta say, I love the Beast Titan's design. He's monkey, bro.
He's just a big ass monkey.
So
anyway,
it's also like that scene where like it ends with like him. So you realize he can also command other Titans, and like he tells them all to freeze when he's talking with the guy, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, you guys can move now," and then they just start eating him and tearing him apart, and it's so gruesome.
So kind of to focus on that, this is one of those scenes where I think it shows kind of the bad side of the philosophy of you can't achieve anything if you don't fight. Because the guy, he says the same thing, like, you can't win if you don't fight the Titans, blah blah blah. And then he shows up here, he's like freaked out because the Titan's talking to him, and he doesn't know what to say, and he like picks up his gear, he takes his gear with him because he's like, I need to study this, I need to see how this thing works, because he's fascinated by it. And the guy, he starts to walk away, and the guy's like, okay, I'm probably gonna get out of this alive. I mean, his leg has been bitten, but like, he forgot about him, so he's probably gonna be able to just, you know, get away somehow, hide out till the Titans go away. But instead, he remembers what he said about, like, you gotta fight. So he, like, picks up a sword and screams at him, and then he's like, oh yeah, you guys can eat him now. And it's a very comical scene, but I think it also shows that pride is a man's downfall, basically.
Yeah. I do think it was kind of a little bit disappointing, like his character, because he's kind of set up as the second strongest guy, and he really just gets brutally murdered before he really accomplishes anything.
That's how a lot of the characters early on.
But you know, that's part of the theme: death, dying, death.
The first episode pretty much had me hooked because it pretty much immediately established or reestablished that this is supposed to be a creepy series, and it touches on some pretty scary ideas. And that you know, further cements like its focus on horror more so than action. And it only gets creepier from here. I think the first thing I want to talk about, because we're not really going to summarize the whole thing, the first thing I want to talk about is just the Beast Titan and Titans as a whole, kind of how they work conceptually and all that.
Mm-hmm. They do the best analogy I'd make for them is zombies. They do feel a lot like, you know, Like, man-eating
unpredictable,
monsters.
unpredictable, very unintelligent, and easy to work around if you know what you're doing. But what makes them a little bit scarier than zombies is their massive size. How easy it is for them to just pick you up and just gobble you down, and they won't hesitate. They'll do it. And
Yeah,
some
I
of
think
them.
when I was no,
Go
I'll
ahead.
continue.
No, just go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think when I was going into this series, I expected it to be a very like standard, oh, we're gonna kill all these monsters and we're gonna look so cool while doing it. But but as the series goes on, like it becomes clear that like, oh, they're just trying to survive. So many of them are getting eaten. The Titans are they're so outmatched.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them. Kind of the first thing we focus on after the Beast Titan. I mean, the next couple episodes are equally as terrifying because after they clear out the Titans and get everything settled, they go to where the Titans came from. Because one of them, Connie, he's like that was they came from my hometown. They came from where I live, and so he's freaked out, thinking maybe they might have eaten his family or his people. So he goes back to this town. And what they find is weird because the horses are still there, so they couldn't have evacuated. And there's no like blood, no like
Yeah, no blood, no corpses, no nothing.
and the only Titan that is left is one with tiny arms and tiny legs, and it's like sticking out right out of Connie's home, and it vaguely resembles his mother. And it talks to him too. Like it also speaks, and I think it says like "Welcome home" or something like that. It freaks him out. And I think what's interesting about this whole stretch is that Connie is like he's freaking out. He's thinking the worst possible thing, and Reiner he's like putting up the guise of like a supportive friend, and he's like, no, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't pay it no mind. Like, and at first you think like he's just being supportive. But those who had predicted the twist, which I think we'll talk about that in a minute, those who predicted the twist basically knew already, like, this is all just a cover-up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this season is when it gets revealed that Reiner, he's one of the bad guys. So I think it's okay to mention it right now. But yeah,
okay.
I got that same thing. Like at first you think he's just being supportive, and then you realize later, oh wait, he knows what's going on, and he's kind of trying to get people to not come to that conclusion. And that's like the central mystery of this season. It's all about, well, Titans have shown up, so the wall must be broken, but we scoured through the wall and we can't find a hole. Where did the Titans come from? And eventually they come to realize, oh, people can turn into Titans the same way Eren can.
Yeah,
and so, it like takes a whole season for them to figure that out. But like for me, I think it was pretty obvious. Like once you after Connie's bit, like once you see that,
once you see Connie's mom, and after the whole thing with Annie, it's kind of clear. It's kind of obvious.
Yeah. Like once they set up that Eren could turn into a Titan, it wasn't that much of it wasn't very difficult to intuit.
Yeah, and kind of, there's not much to say about Titans. Like I said, that OVA, it was a very good OVA. It was a very creepy one because it kind of put more insight into the Titans, where there's almost like a religious element to them. So clearly they're all tied together, and it seems like all of us can turn into them. So I think it's achieved kind of that uncanny valley of like, these are people, but they have been reduced to this zombified state where they're big monsters that eat people, and they can't control themselves. Because that OVA, what it kind of conveyed was that the Titan didn't want to eat her. Like it recognized her as Ymir. It thought that she was the goddess Ymir or whatever, and so it tries to fight itself. It's like pulling on its eyes and like freaking out, trying really hard not to give in to its Titan desires and eat this woman, and it does anyway because it can't help itself. It's a Titan. So still mysterious, still creepy, but you kind of learn a little bit more about the Titans, and how much of a threat they are.
So like you said, the show really sets up that like Titans are these they really outmatch people. Like it's so difficult to kill them. But then they also kind of casually mention in season 2, by the way, that most of them can't move at night. And I feel like that's a pretty, like, exploitable weakness, like, if you think about it.
And this is a sign of things to come in this show, because as it gets better, there are various holes that kind of pop up left and right regarding these Titans.
I could come up with a defense of that, which is that some Titans, there are a few that can still move at night, and you do not want to mess with them when, you know, when you can't see. So yeah. That's how I cover up that hole.
Yeah, but it's still loose. Because it's like, at a certain point, how could they not have figured out, like, yeah, we can just, you know, figure out how to just leave. Just go. Just journey out beyond the walls. But they never touch on that, and as the series goes on, there's much more egregious problems with the Titans that I can't go in until, like, literally season 4. So we'll talk about that later. But for now, I mean, yeah, you know, you got the Titans, and then you got the Wall Church, and their kind of whole thing where they've got secrets they're clearly covering up, that they know a lot about these Titans, and there's not much you can learn from them, really, aside from the priest seeing that his own people are suffering because of these Titans, and feeling kind of guilty, but also staying true to his conviction and just, I can't share, I can't tell. And yeah. When you actually eventually do learn the truth, it becomes a lot easier to kind of sympathize with him and understand why he can't tell the truth and why he can't give them the answers they want, because of how just corrupt the system in this whole island, this whole, like, inner walls is.
Their society.
Yeah. Society.
It does make sense eventually, but at the time you're like, what is this dude's problem?
Yeah, you pretty much...
the only information that they get out of him, the only thing, is that he tells them that somebody else probably knows a thing or two, and that someone is Krista.
And you can already kind of pick up that there's something shady going on, or why he won't tell, because after he gives just that small nugget of information, he ends up being murdered by Interior Police.
Yeah.
But again, something we can't really go over yet. So he says, ask Krista, she probably knows more than me, and so becomes a hunt for Krista, or Historia.
Yeah. And I want to say real quick, I do like this season's focus is kind of on, at least for the first, like, half of the season, it's away from, like, our central trio, and instead we're looking at the supporting cast, and that I really like. I really like how, we're going to talk about her, but I love Sasha's episode, and I love the arc of, like, Reiner, Bertolt, Ymir, and Historia trying to survive a Titan attack. And that's something I really liked about this season.
Yeah, and so it's a little hard not to just jump all over the place, because you get scattered screen time of all the other characters. You know, everything that Season 1 set up, it's like trying to expand more on the world and on the other characters that you don't get to see much, that you didn't get much time in Season 1. They're getting much more attention now. And I think, for me personally, since I want to talk about them from, like, least important to most important, and the first one I wanted to address was Sasha.
Yeah, because she gets kind of a whole episode to herself.
Yeah, basically, like, you learn a little bit more about her, and in Season 1 you think she's just the goofy character. You think she's just the silly, stupid potato girl with serious, like, problems. And she's got, like, some weird form of autism or whatever. But in this one you learn that she's a little bit more than that. She's actually a good person, and she gets a whole episode where she is alone, and she remembers, like, it sets up her backstory with her father, where they're more country folk, but they're like, you know, they live out in the woods, they don't use any of this flashy technology, but then eventually he's like, we probably should help them, because it's important to help your fellow man, and she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to because she prefers to live in the woods and just live alone. And,
so the thing is, she wants to live a life of, like hunting animals in the wood, but the problem is that since the wall's been broken, they need like every bit of farmland that they can get to actually provide enough food for everyone. And so there's so the conflict is sort of like the way Sasha wants to live versus what the world needs. And you kind of get a hint that like that they're kind of victimized a little bit by the people outside the forest, and that's why she kind of resents them. But I do like the way it like concludes. Like her father has this deep sense of like responsibility for the world around him, and she kind of learns that there's more outside the world than herself.
Yeah, and that empathetic like help your fellow man, that's exactly what she does here in this episode, because she comes across a town and everyone's gone. It's been evacuated, luckily, but there's a house where there's this old lady and she's being chewed on by one of the smaller titans. It's barely like 6-7 feet tall, and it's just chewing on her, and it's eating her very slowly, and she's got this little girl that's just frozen stiff, terrified. And it's just a shitty situation. It means that they left her behind in there because they were so scared they didn't think about this woman and her, her legs and how she's not as fast as they are. So they just completely abandoned her and this poor little girl. And so Sasha steps in and saves her. And this is a very important episode, both in this season and in the overarching show altogether. But I don't know. What do you think of this part?
Yeah. I guess kind of a reminder that the people are kind of shitty.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
but it is you've
been reminded of that since season 1. So
yeah, but it is a very what happens next is Sasha's trying to like save this girl from the Titan, but she doesn't have any weapons, and
her horse runs away.
Very heroic. Yeah. It's very heroic.
I'll say it's very funny because it's like it still keeps up her goofy personality where like she's like trying to keep the girl calm and she's like, don't freak out, but she's freaking out. And then the horse runs away and she's like, okay, freak out, and she's like screaming and like trying to keep it together, and then the Titan's following them, and so she's like, okay, well, we just gotta make it by foot, we just gotta run, get across this bridge. So she runs, takes the girl to the bridge, kind of tosses her over, and then the Titan's still following, so she has to like slow it down, and she like shoots one arrow into its eye, she shoots another and misses, and then she's got one more. So she's like, okay, screw this, and she like jumps up and stabs it in the eye, and then just manages to slip through and run away and get away in time. And then her father happens to show up with the little girl on his horse. So because Sasha did that, because Sasha helped that little girl, she then called for reinforcements to come pick her up, and they got out of there. And it's a pretty good episode. It's a very fun, like, it made me realize I like Sasha, and I didn't think that, I didn't care much about her in season 1. So seeing her do something cool in season 2, at the time you don't get the point of it, you will later, but it's a nice episode.
I think what I liked about it is it was an episode that was just focused on like one character and their story. Because like in season 1, they drop like so many characters that they throw at you, and it's hard to really like care about most of them. And then in season 2, we start getting a little bit more focus on the supporting cast and like being given a reason to care about them. Which is especially the case for like the next part that I think we're headed towards here, which is the situation with Ymir and Historia.
Yeah, Ymir and Krista, or Historia, whichever you really want to address, they take big focus in kind of the next stretch. So we talked about how they went to the whole squad went to this town. They saw that Connie's town had been, they're all gone, and the Titans came from there, but there's no like the horses are still there, no blood, no like only one house is really like some of the houses are torn up, but like there's no signs of like people being killed. And so that night they're like, okay, we gotta go out, we gotta patrol, and they go around the walls and in 2 teams, and then they meet in the middle and find there is no hole. It hasn't been broken into.
What?
So where the heck did those Titans come from? And it's a very like it is honestly the most atmospheric Attack on Titan's gotten thus far, because it's like they're just the anticipation, the tension. Like they got their lanterns and they're just expecting like a Titan to jump out at them, but it doesn't, and they find that there's no wall, there's no like hole in the wall. But then they happen to come across a castle, and they're like, okay, let's just stay here for the night. And so this whole stretch, it's interesting because it balances like slice of life with like pure horror with like pure action. Like the 3 all kind of together in one. Yeah, the 3 all together in like one mix. It's a very, very like fascinating stretch. Where basically
it's not the kind of storytelling you typically expect from shonen. That's what I appreciate about it.
Yeah, and it's basically like they're in this castle, and you got these like 2 higher up officers. One of them is this blonde woman, I forgot her name. The other one is another like badass dude. He's like cool. And then the 2 of them, they're watching over these people, and they're the only 2 with gear. And then they get attacked. They get this wave of Titans that just randomly appear and attack them. And it's like, it's nighttime. Why are they attacking us? But here they are. There's just this wave of Titans attacking them. And pretty much you're seeing Ymir and Reiner team up to fight these Titans. And there's a lot of really, really cool parts. Like some of the smaller Titans get in. There's like, I think this meme that came from this episode.
Yeah, Reiner's opening the door.
Yeah, he opens the door. Oh, there it is. He closes it immediately, like tries to slam it shut, and then it breaks through. And so Ymir comes in with like a cannon and is like, move out of the way, and like rolls it down the thing. And they're like, okay, it's fine. But then another one comes out and it bites Reiner's arm, and then he's like just under a lot of pressure, and then he like pulls it over his head and throws it out the window. So it's like a lot of crazy shit like that you know, you didn't get much of that in the previous season, partly because it's like they don't have gear. So now the stakes are like ramped up to 100. It's like 10 times crazier than anything in season 1. And I think what's also cool is like, now that we know the twist with Reiner, when you look back at this whole part, you can see him kind of questioning, like, should I transform? Should I just like transform and make this easier on myself?
Oh yeah. There's something with Bertolt too, but I'm not going to mention it right now. But I do agree with you that I like that I love this little stretch, because they have no weapons, they have no like tools, like none of the super cool 3D maneuver gear stuff. They have to like survive on their wits and like with the objects around them, and that leads to a lot of tension.
To be honest, like if the first season and like for a while it would have just been like Ymir and Reiner, I would have been so much more invested, because they were kind of what sold it for me. Reiner, he was already like the highlight of season 1, kind of. Mostly it was Erwin, but back in season 1 there was like a whole thing where he was fighting Annie, the female Titan, and she literally has him like in her hand, and then he like, you think he's dead, you think she's crushed him, but then he like splits the hand open, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But like here too, like he seems to be getting, it seems like he's getting all the, like, when you look at it through the lens of just him being on our side, it seems like he's getting all the action a lot of the time. He's like the suicidal character, save for Eren.
He feels like kind of like the Rock of the group, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's the guy that everyone really like depends on.
Yeah. And so Ymir, like I said, she gets a lot of highlight here because she's just awesome, and it's mostly for how unhinged she is. And it's that's one thing I appreciated that the series doesn't dabble too much in, was just the dynamic between Ymir and Reiner, because like there's a point even when they're like they chill out, they finally get rid of some of the Titans, and they're like, okay, we're good, we're safe, and then you know, they make a comment to each other like, you're gay, and he's like, I thought you were gay. So they make fun of each other,
No.
which felt like Isayama kind of slightly mentioning like ships, but it was clear that Ymir was intended to be gay from the outset.
Yeah, and that's actually the thing. Another thing that really surprised me is Ymir and Historia's relationship.
Yeah.
It is a shockingly like well written LGBT subplot that's just sitting in this like action shonen for teenage boys. Like,
Yeah,
what?
that's
Bro was cooking.
I think part of what makes it tasteful is that Attack on Titan is not a show with fan service. It's not. It doesn't do that like a lot of other shows do, and so for the simple fact that it's not objectifying the women in it, the women can then they have more room to be more tasteful and have more to them beyond just that.
Yeah, it's really likable. Like just because you're rooting for them.
In this season alone, it's well done. But then you're going to see later on, they kind of stomp all over this. And that is one issue I have with the series as a whole, because this was actually the hook for me. This was Ymir and Historia were like what got me invested in the first place. Kind of what you learn about Ymir and Historia is that you've already seen from season 1. Historia, she's like a bubbly, like sunshiny, sweet woman. And then Ymir is like the opposite. She's like a blunt, like rude, aggressively like I don't want to say hateful, but just like inconsiderate person.
A real hater.
Yeah, and so I do love the focus on Ymir for really this whole stretch because I mean, like I said, Reiner, he gets some cool scenes here and there, but so does Ymir, and also her flexible dynamic. She has like a fun dynamic with everybody. There's like a point where I think she asks to borrow Connie's knife, and he's like, a knife's not going to do anything, and she's like, just please give it to me, and she's being bossy, and so he's like, fine here, and he gives her his knife, and then she just pats his head like, there, thank you, good boy. He gets even more annoyed. So there's like a lot of like cute little moments like that with Ymir, where she clearly seems to have like a good dynamic with everybody, despite how jaded and dejected she likes to think that she is.
And that really comes out in her relationship with Historia. Do you want to talk about like Ymir's backstory?
We probably should, yeah. Basically, Ymir has lived most of her life. Well, okay, Ymir. This is one thing for sure that I took issue with in season 2, because we've been trying to do these reviews not mentioning things in the future, and we're not going to elaborate on it because at the time you barely, like, I didn't even know what that was. I was like, what the hell was that? And then I found they expanded on it later. But it actually shows you this chapter is not chronological. I think in the manga this chapter happens way later when it becomes relevant because he didn't want to give away too much too early. But I think when they adapted it, they were like, yeah, but considering the way they treat Ymir later on as a character, it's best we just put it here, because they probably felt it didn't give away too much. And to their credit, it really didn't. But it is very, like, it does risk spoiling the whole thing, clear through to season 4.
That's like the clearest glimpse you get of like what's going on, what's like where the Titans are coming from, and
just
everything.
Looking at this from someone who doesn't know, like just pretending that season 3 and 4 don't exist. Basically, her backstory is she used to live in a very different time, forever ago, and she vaguely resembled the goddess Ymir. It's a similar premise to that OVA I mentioned, where she vaguely resembled the goddess Ymir. So the people found this out, and they revered her, and they treated her like a goddess. And put her on a high pedestal. But then they, much like the storybook of Ymir, which is presented as a myth from season 1 to now, they betray her, exactly like in the book. And there's even an image of all of them pointing the fingers at her, because these people find them, and they're like, where is your leader? And they all are like, she did it. She groomed us. She's the ritual master. So they all get arrested, and then she gets dumped on this like sand place and then kicked off the wall, and then the next thing you know, she wakes up as a Titan. How it happened, you're not really given a clear indication, though you can kind of guess, given the little reference to Aaron's dad injecting him with something in season 1, that she probably got injected with something. You can kind of put 2 and 2 there.
I think you actually hear the noise of like being stabbed with a needle or something.
Yeah, it's very subtle. So like she got turned into a Titan by these weird officers. Who those officers are, we're not gonna say. But for some reason, they've got like guns. They've got like, you know, actual uniforms. They look a little bit more modern than much of the medieval stuff that we've seen up until this point. So, but either way, she turns into a Titan. She, for years and years and years, runs and it gets buried in dirt, and then a group of people camp around her, and she awakens and emerges from the dirt, eats one of them, and then turns into a person, and then she's naked, and she's like, she saw something weird.
Important detail.
Yeah, she's naked. She's got her crack out, just her fat ass just hanging out, and she is looking up at the stars, and she sees the paths, which is another important image that will again be elaborated on much later. So there's a lot of things with Ymir's character that are all setting up for something way later that we won't get to fully internalize until season 3 and 4. But after that, it's a very, I want to say the imagery has gotten better, because like that image of seeing her like naked and vulnerable, and she's like looking up at the stars with like a grin on her face, and she's just so full of joy, and it's like, it's a very beautiful, touching moment.
It's kind of like a rebirth for her, in a sense.
And so we should probably talk about Historia's backstory as well, right?
Yeah, because there's like a duality between them that I really like. So I can kind of explain Historia's backstory. I believe the amount of information that we're given in this season is that, well, first of all, she goes by Krista, but her real name is Historia, and she's a member of the true royal family, but her family wants to cover up her existence, and the ruling class wants to cover up her existence, so she's forced to leave and like have a different name and to never mention any of this to anyone. But Ymir kind of overhears this kind of arrangement that she's been set up with, and
so it becomes like she's just like me for real type thing.
And that's what I really like, because so for Ymir, you know, she spent her previous life she's spent trying to please other people, to be what other people want her to be, and she sees that in Historia as well. That's what, you know, Historia is also putting on this act of being so selfless. She has a fake identity, and she doesn't want Historia to live like that, and it's just really, really, really touching dynamic that they have.
Yeah, and it's also kind of this thing's like, there's this whole stretch where I think Ymir basically, this is maybe like a bit of a stretch for me to say, but it's like, I feel like Ymir's identity as a Titan itself can also be treated, at least for this dynamic, kind of like queerness, because she comes out to Historia, basically, there's this part where like everybody's gotten back to the cabin, but their friend is still out there, and Historia has gone to retrieve him. She's got him in a bag, and she's tugging on the bag, and Ymir sees her doing this, and she's like, "You're an idiot. Like, you're not gonna make it back. You're gonna die. Like, there's no way you're both gonna die of hypothermia." And Historia's like, "No, I'm gonna bring him back. Thank you very much." And then Ymir basically calls her out, and she's like, "No, you're doing this because you want to die, and you're using him as a reason to do so." And then she's basically like denying it, but it's like clear that that's the case. She wants to die a heroic death, helping someone else, and she thinks that'll, but because she wants to die anyway, but she doesn't want to. She wants people to appreciate her when she's gone, or something like that. So.
Yeah, because she's kind of internalized that her existence is an inconvenience for other people, and like that has like so much weight over her, and Ymir recognizes that as well because she can relate to that.
Yeah, but she very harshly says, like, it's basically like her holding a gun to her head, and she's like, "You better fucking love yourself right now, bitch." So what Ymir does is she kicks her, and some snow falls on top of her so she can't see what she does. Turns to a Titan, grabs him, takes him down the mountain to the cabin, and then Krista, or Historia, whichever one you want to say, she comes back and sees that Ymir and him are both safe, and basically, like, she's like, "Okay, you got me." And then she tells her about her identity. So Historia actually knew this whole time, but it isn't revealed until kind of the second half, the end of the first half of the season, that this whole time Ymir was a Titan, though we just went over that. And she shows herself in front of everybody because the tower is getting knocked down. Those two like leader scouts that we talked about get killed.
Yeah, they did.
And their deaths are super, super dark. Like, the woman, she's like getting eaten, and she starts apologizing to her dad, which implies very subtly that she might have been a victim of abuse. And then after she dies, the guy, he like falls into another room in the castle, and all he wants is some alcohol. He just wants a drink, and he goes to drink out of a bottle, but it's empty. And then he kind of just dies with no hope and no not even his final wish.
That part was like a little uncomfortably dark for me the first time.
Oh, it's like
the woman, like,
for the woman, it's like one type of dark, and then for him, it's like an existential type of dark, where it's like you're given hope that like at least you'll get your final drink, and he doesn't, and then he just dies, and that's got to be a horrible feeling when you go out. So it's a very like needlessly dark death for these two characters that you don't know that much about. But they both die, so now we're officially just screwed. Because the Titans won't stop coming. They already killed all those ones from earlier, and then more came, so there's no way out of this. So Ymir basically sees this, and then she turns into a Titan, and she starts fighting them. But there's still too many, and they're giving her a lot of trouble. So Historia is, like, basically screaming at her, like, "No! You are gonna... Like, you're trying to protect us, and you're not supposed to be protecting us! Knock this whole tower down!" And so it's this crazy part where Ymir, like, gets up on the tower, and she's taking bricks out, and she's, like, throwing them at the Titans and, like, knocking them back, and it's a very hype moment. It's very, very good.
And it's another, like, moment of, like, of showing how they relate to each other, on how, like they should be more selfish. They should prioritize their own needs more, and to, like, stop trying to live for other people. And that really comes up over and over again, and it's sort of the defining, that's how, like, they relate to each other, and I really liked that.
One thing that gets reiterated a lot, and we'll expand on it more in season 3, but basically, one reason that they work so well together is that Historia, in season 1 and some parts of season 2, you can kind of see that she is really trying really, really hard with this, like, this overly sweet, overly, like, empathetic front that she puts up. Like, in season 1, there's this scene where she sees that Armin and Reiner are okay. And then she starts doing this whole dramatic, like, crying, like, I'm so glad you're okay. And they're both like, marry me. But it's like, I kind of cringed in that part because it did feel a little forced. And then in season 2, there's like
But
another
then
part.
you realize it is forced.
There's another part in season 2 where she, like Reiner, after he got bitten, she like cuts part of her dress and then like wraps up his wound, and then he's bricked up and he's like, marry me. And because she's doing this whole like, I'm so sorry that I couldn't get you like a clean cloth, I have to give you my dirty dress, but this is the best I can do. And you know, like, it's not to say that she's not empathetic, but it is to say that like she's putting up a front partially because she wants to be liked by other people. She's desperate for approval, and Ymir basically tells her, you don't need to do that. You don't need to pretend in front of me. And so that's why they work so well together. They have like such a good dynamic.
It was very surprising for me how good like their relationship is. It's another thing that you would never expect to come out of like a shonen action series marketed to like teenage boys.
Well, especially not one this popular, like this successful.
Yeah.
I don't really have much else to say. I do think that Ymir's motivations for a lot of this season feel impulsive. They don't feel like they make much sense, especially towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
where,
it gets confusing.
So we should probably talk about Reiner and Bertolt, because they're the big focus of this season.
At least the second half of the season.
From the outset, basically, you are just blatantly, flat out told, like, Reiner goes up to Eren and just says with a straight face, I am the Armored Titan, and Bertolt is the Colossal Titan. And Bertolt's like, what are you doing? And he's like, come on, Eren, you know, work with us here. Just come with us. You don't need these fools. And so the reason that I think he did that was because people had predicted Annie. They knew from the blonde hair and kind of the figure that it was like, this is Annie. So I think by that point, when, you know, from there, people were able to kind of do the process of elimination, and they saw this Armored Titan it's very muscular, and it's got kind of a blondish hair, and it's short hair, and it looks like Reiner. So they were like, okay, that's Reiner, and if that's Reiner, that means that the Colossal Titan, through the process of elimination, is Bertolt, because he's the only one who hangs around Reiner all that time. So
people really figured it out.
So he basically decided to use his he decided to do the same thing that he did with Marco, where he reveals it and then afterwards builds on it, where he like reiterates like, this is a huge betrayal. Because the team themselves, they pretty much already figure it out, and Eren doesn't want to believe it. Eren just refuses to accept that someone like Reiner would be a traitor.
Yeah. Can I say something really quick about this scene? The other wild thing about this part is like the way it plays out is like you said, Reiner just walks up to Eren. He says, "Hey, I'm the Titan. I'm the Armored Titan, and he's the Beast Titan, and he's the Colossal Titan." And then immediately, like they shift to some other conversation, like, before you've been given a second to process, and like.
But like regarding this whole stretch, like we all saw it coming. It was obvious that they were, you know, the Armored and Colossal. And so they, like, Isayama, he's just like, let's get this out of the way. They are the Armored and Colossal. Now let me show you why this is not a good thing. And they kind of build on it. And I've never seen a twist done like that before. There's a lot of, like, symbolism.
Like, I don't know if you remember when you were showing me this, but I straight up, like, missed the moment that Reiner said he was the Armored Titan. Because, like I said, it immediately pans to a different conversation.
I had to, like, rewind and go back. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can hear them kind of talking in the background.
But, there's a lot of symbolism here. Like, there's this flag that's like hanging up, and it's waving around in the wind. And then as soon as Reiner and Bertolt decide, okay, we need to transform now because we're screwed. They know now. There's no going back. We gotta see this through to the end. And then the flag falls, kind of like because Reiner calls himself a warrior.
Yeah.
And also, it's like, it also expands on a lot of the things from beforehand. When they were on the tower and things were getting bad, you saw Bertolt holding his hand up to his mouth. Like
Yeah,
I
almost forgot to mention that. Like,
they also figure out that, like, when he was in Annie's hand and it looked like things were really bad for him, and then he cuts her hand open.
Can I explain that part?
Yeah.
I really like that. So, like, it all adds up when you look back on it. Like, that moment that Reiner seems to heroically free himself from the clutches of death, because just before that, so the way that arc was set up is that so Erwin's plan is he tells everybody in their formation that he gives them different information about where Eren is, and when Reiner and Armin realize that, Reiner just kind of casually asks him, hey, so where do you think Eren's really being kept? And Armin's like, I guess it would make the most sense for him to be at the center. And right after that, right after Reiner gets caught by by Annie and then he frees himself, Annie suddenly starts making a beeline for the center of the formation. And so you've realized, oh, Reiner didn't free himself. He just was an act. He was going to tell Annie where he thinks Eren is. It was all a scheme.
And he did it by carving it into her hand, which that was a little weak because it's like, how could she read it? How could she read it? Sorry. Someone's sneezing. How could she read it with the steam coming out of her hand? Like, it seems like that's a little counterproductive, right? But
yeah,
he draws it on her hand, and then she intuits, and so she's like, okay, that's what led to the whole dynamic where she's heading after Eren. So this is all the evidence they use, and then he's like, he comes out with it, and he's like, okay, and then it leads to a fight between Eren and Reiner, and the Colossal Titans just kind of chilling up on the big thing, the wall, and they can't approach him because he's emitting too much steam. So the big focus here is just Eren and Reiner, and I've got a couple complaints about this fight. I think it's a good fight overall, but I've got a couple issues with it.
Yeah. Just real quick before we get to that fight, I just wanted to mention that I love, like, when I go back and watch Season 1 after realizing that these guys are the bad guys, like, their behavior actually makes sense. Like, there's this moment where, like, the cannon gets fired at Eren during Season 1, and you see, like, Reiner and Bertolt and Annie react to it, and they rush over. And you realize that that's not because they're concerned for their friend. It's because they're like, oh crap, they're going to get rid of him. We have to take him away.
Yeah. What was I going to say? So, there's a lot of, like, clues that they're written to make you... They're basically to fake you out. You think one thing, and then it turns out that it's another. And that's part of what I love about it, because it makes it kind of hard to figure it out, but there's still that kind of, like, looseness to it. But anyway, we're at the moment of truth where, Reiner and Eren are fighting. And thematically, I think this is a good fight. I think there's a lot of interesting choices where they're fighting.
Yeah.
And Eren remembers a fight he had with Annie. And it goes back to when Reiner and Annie and Eren were all friends, and they weren't, enemies. And she teaches him a thing or two about how to fight. Basically, teaches him how to take down someone bigger than him.
Yeah, how to take advantage of the opponent's strength rather than trying to overpower them with your own strength.
And it's interesting because he's basically using the knowledge of the enemy against the enemy. But my issue with it is, we talked about this in Season 1, I don't like that Attack on Titan basically forgets to set something up, so it's like, here it is in the heat of the moment. Because I feel like this would have been so much better and so much more impactful if this scene was back in season 1, and then like because Eren himself at the time, he's literally thinking to himself, why am I thinking about this? What does this have to do with anything? Which is so dumb. If this had been set up in season 1, back when it was relevant, back when it happened, then Eren, like, all you would have had here,
so good.
All you would have had here is Eren performing that move, and then it, like, there's a part where it cuts to Annie doing it to him for like a brief second, and then him doing it to Reiner. And that would have been subtle. That would have been like, oh, okay, cool. But instead, they just set up this explanation right before it, and it just feels a little redundant.
Yeah, it would have been such a satisfying, like, delivery. There's a lot of, like, in the series, there's a lot of flashbacks that shouldn't have been flashbacks. They should have just, happened. Like, we should have just seen it in chronological order, and it would have been much more satisfying.
Like, I will say, with the whole Ymir thing, I can see why that was given to us now. Not really the part with the soldiers, but the part where she saves the guy from the snow. I get why that's a flashback. That was fine. But, like, this whole thing with Annie, I just think it could have been better if it had just been presented.
But I do kind of, I at least, like the idea of, like, Eren's trying to, like, beat Reiner with brute force, but then he's like, what, he's got all this armor, how am I supposed to beat this guy? He's unbeatable. And then he realizes that he's got to change his approach to fighting. So that I like. It would have been a lot better if, like you said, that was set up earlier rather than just inserting a flashback.
Yeah, and so...
But oh well.
We've been recording for an hour. We should probably wrap this up soon, because I don't really have much to say for, like, the last stretch. There's a couple of things to go over, but we can just kind of quickly, like,
I think we can kind of skip past the fight. Basically, Eren's about to beat Reiner, but then Bertolt intervenes and they catch him.
And there's another meme. It's another meme where Connie's, like, looking up over at the Armored Titan, or the Colossal Titan, and I don't know how people didn't figure out, because I knew this was going to happen from the outset, but people didn't figure it out, because they're like, where are the Titans? He screamed, but where are the Titans? And then Connie looks over at the Colossal Titan, and then the Colossal Titan's slowly starting to fall over. He's like, wait, and then it like eats Eren, and so that's how they capture him. And it does that same plot point that we complained about in season 1 with the whole Mikasa freaking out because Eren's been captured, and Levi's like, no, wait.
Oh, yep, they do it again.
Afterwards, we get this stretch that I'm not a super big fan of, where, do you remember that drunk guy?
Oh, yeah.
He talks to... There's this whole episode where there's no action, nothing happens, it's like the cool down after the fight, and he talks to Armin and Mikasa like, remember when... back in the day when y'all were kids, I wish we could cherish those memories forever. And it's going over the whole thing, and then it gives this flashback where the only reason it's here is so this episode can have some action, but it's so corny because it's like, it has nothing to do with anything, it has nothing to do with what's going on at hand. It's just him reminiscing in the past, and we already know, like, we've already seen the past, we already know. We don't need this whole, like, goofy scene.
We already know he has kind of like a friendship with Eren and Armin and Mikasa.
And it's only reiterated here because of things that happen at the end.
Yeah. He feels like their, like, chill uncle. I kind of do like that about him, but yeah, it's not really needed.
So,
but the part that really frustrated me is the part after this where Eren wakes up and there's this conversation between him and Reiner and Ymir. I don't know if you wanna like to run us through that real quick.
I do like parts of this conversation because it's like Reiner. It reveals a little bit about Reiner's mental health and his condition, because he starts talking like nothing happened. Like he starts like. He's like, well, they ought to give us a promotion after this, we've been through so much today. I'm such an idiot, I almost died 3 times now. And then Eren's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then he remembers, he's like, oh shit, right, my bad.
I killed everyone.
I may be a genocidal murderer. Whoops, forgot about that.
My fault, OG.
Uh, and then, yeah, but the frustrating part about this, at least for me, was just Eren, because he's just it's so funny because he's in the right, you know, like he's right to be angry, but he's just acting like a piss baby. He's just being so annoying.
Okay, I may have killed your mom, but like, chill, dude. You know, like, you're kind of bringing down the vibes here. Like,
Pretty much. I don't know. Just he has these like little stubby arms, and like at one point he tackles Reiner and starts punching him with his little stub. that got a kick out of that one. It's a very unintentionally funny scene.
yeah.
And
So,
you know.
to kind of this whole conversation. So Reiner and Bertolt are trying to convince Ymir to come with them and to help them out. And the thing you realize is that the three of them know about how Titans work. They know about the world outside. They know the truth about the Attack on Titan world, and we don't, and Eren doesn't. And it makes this conversation so confusing to listen to. Like
after you
I
found
saw
out the
whole
truth.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a
Like-
little more sense once you know. But even then, it was really hard to follow, like, whose side Ymir was taking and why. And
And on top of that, it's like they use words that don't ever come up again or never get explained. So it's like they keep saying the coordinate, and it's like hard to kind of know what they mean by that, even after you've already gotten the twist of the truth and all that. Like, I know what they mean
I
now.
think,
But
like,
it's like
when you were showing me this, I was like, I kept asking you, like, what the are they talking about? And you have to keep telling me it's fine. It'll make sense later. I'm
it'll
sorry.
make sense in season 4, and then you made a joke. It's like Attack on Titan fans when season 4 explains why their father left them. So really, I mean, after this, that's the rest of the season is just again pure adrenaline rush of them. Like basically, everybody is like, okay, we gotta go chase down Eren, and then Erwin comes up with a plan to, basically, what he's like gonna do is he's gonna chase after them, and he's going to send all the Titans. He's gonna have all the Titans chase him, and then send them all directly towards Reiner, so that they could eat. One of them could eat Reiner, and they could figure something out. But it's like it's a very sloppily thrown together plan, but they don't have any other option. They don't really have any
Just
better
pure
alternative.
chaos.
And I love it so fucking much because it's like he gets bitten by a Titan, like his arm gets bitten off by a Titan. And he's like carrying him, and he's like screaming at his soldiers, like keep going, while he's like losing his whole arm. So it's very
so
hype.
real.
It's a very crazy.
My favorite thing is like one guy says, "Is this hell?" and everyone says, "No, but it will be." He was so real.
I don't really have much else to say about this whole finale because there are a lot of moving parts to it, like the first season, but it all kind of builds together into one big thing, where essentially, the Titan that ate Eren's mom back in episode 1, it eventually, like, the drunk guy, he's here in this team to rescue Eren, and they do rescue Eren, and then and I'm not going to say anything else about Reiner or Bertolt because I'm going to expand more on that in season 3. But
Fair enough.
the drunk guy, he gets picked up by the Titan that ate Eren's mom and eats him. And Eren can't do anything to stop it. He can't turn into a Titan. He can't. But the Titan's going to pick him up. He punches its hand, and then all the Titans, because Eren did that, come and eat her. And Reiner and Bertolt, they see this, they're like, God damn it. And then they basically decide to retreat.
He's the coordinate. He's the Bingus.
And the funny part is, like, before Eren did that, everybody was about to die. They were all, like, cornered by Titans. Eren does that, and then the Titans all run, and everybody gets saved. And it's a very cathartic moment. But aside from that, I really don't have much else to say about this finale, because it's very standard. It's a little predictable, but it's fine. And I think it kind of ties up enough. It definitely Eren gets revenge for his mother, at least.
Yeah.
And it adds more things that haven't been explained.
Yeah, then it just adds another piece of information that gets you wondering, like, how did Eren do that? Eren can control Titans? How?
And the explanation for why is crazy as hell.
Yeah, and it comes later, and it all makes... It's another example of how good this series is at building on itself and, like, leaking little bits of information at a time that eventually, like, come together and make a complete picture. And that's one of my favorite things about the series.
Yeah, so I know I'm kind of rushing through all this, but again, like, unless you have anything else to say about that final stretch, we can kind of just...
I guess it's a really nice moment for, like, Historia, I think. She has a little moment where she's trying to, you know, save her friend, and it's kind of her epic moment where she beats Swags on a bunch of Titans. And, you know, I like Historia. I like her.
Yeah.
Good character.
And
Good job.
There was like a... Okay, I do want to mention, there was like a funny part where she's in love with Ymir, and Ymir is siding with Reiner and Bertolt, and then one of the people is like, you're not really siding with them, are you? And then Ymir's like, well, you know, you don't know. Titans might have a good reason to eat people, so you don't know. So there's some unintentionally funny dialogue, and of course, the way it ends is Ymir ends up going with Reiner and Bertolt because she feels like she owes them, apparently, because she ate their friend. But again, her motives, they don't really make a lot of sense, and I think that's one of the big flaws. Is like the romance aspect of her character is so well done, but how she adds to the narrative as a whole, it almost kind of does feel like she is only here because Isayama wanted her to be. Because in terms of what she adds to the whole story, not much. Not very much at all.
It does get really confusing about, like, what exactly her goal is. Like,
the characters themselves can't even figure it out.
Yeah, very, very confusing, but I still like her. Good character.
But that being said, like, we'll say more about Historia. We'll say more about Historia. But, you know, final thoughts, kind of conclusion.
Good season, you know, that one, like, confusing element of it was, I think, a thorn in its side, but I will say that almost every character that gets a focus in this season, I really do love, so, you know, that's a high praise.
A lot of crazy moments. It's definitely more exciting somehow than season 1, so it doesn't disappoint, and the pacing is very, very solid. I did not feel bored at all, except for that one episode.
Yes.
But I did not feel bored at all for most of, like, a good 90% of the season. I think it is, like, it does feel like the natural next step for the story to take, but it still keeps you wanting more until season 3, which is close to being the best season.
Yeah, and it only gets better.
Yeah.
It don't stop.
The peak don't stop. So, yeah, again, this is just part 2 of this series. We're going to do, I want to say 3 more videos after this, since season 4 is, like, literally so long, we have to split it into 2 parts. But, yeah, I don't know how to end this. We're basically like, we'll see you in the next one.
Watch JJK, I mean Attack on Titan.
Alright.